So in today's video, we are going to discuss about variables, how do variables operate in Python, JavaScript, and in Swift, and what is the way of dealing with the null values in these various languages. And before we proceed, I would like to tell you that Python was created by Guido von Rossum, this amazing gentleman. He created it, and today the world is using Python language for machine learning and for other purposes. Libraries like NumPy and pandas are extensively used. Swift was created by Chris Latler. He was this person at Apple Corporation, and he developed this language. Another amazing person. He developed it using LLVM. And JavaScript was created by Brendan Eek, another amazing individual. He created this language in a very short span of time. So first of all, let's begin with Python. How do we declare variables in Python? How do we use it? So suppose I say x is equal to 7, then I'll say suppose y is equal to hello, then I'll say z is equal to false, then I'll say run. So everything runs quite well here. Now if I go in here and if I say a is equal to none, and then in order to see what are the types of these particular values, I just need to do percentage whose, and then if I run the code here, you will see that the none type, which is basically the representation of an absence of a value, is represented by the value none here. Z is basically represented by the Boolean value, and I did not need to declare it something like this. So I can just basically go in there and declare it like this. But that was not required here. And why it was not required here? Because the Python interpreter basically interprets the type of a particular variable on the go. So for example, now if I were to say z is equal to 676 and I run the code all over again, you will see that the value of z would have changed in terms of its type. It has now become an int. So this is very interesting. This is the way in which you declare a variable in Python. You don't have to use the word like var here. If you do this, it will actually start generating an error. You just simply declare the name of the variable and then you assign a value to it. And if you want to create an absence of a value, that there could be an absence of a value, then you declare it as none. Later on, for example, if instead of a is equal to none, I say a is equal to a, and then I run the code all over again, and you will see that the value of type a has now been assigned to be a and the type has changed to str. So this is how Python deals with the absence of a value, and this is how dynamically it assigns the value. Once a particular variable, for example here, this was pointing to none, then when a started pointing to a here, it the reference to a is equal to none was broken, and a new type was assigned of str type, and a new value was assigned, and this particular a is equal to none would be now garbage collected. So now if we were to go into the JavaScript console here, this is simply a Chrome browser, and I've opened the developer tool. Here if I were to say var a is equal to 78, and if I were to say var b is equal to hello, and if I were to say var c, and I were to simply say console, sorry, console.log a comma b comma c, and I were to print it, you can see that here you would see that the value of a is 78, the value of b is hello, and the value of c is undefined. So despite the fact that we did not actually declare the type of c, it did not throw an error. It basically said that okay, c is now going to be undefined. And so this is how the absence of value is being dealt with in JavaScript. In JavaScript also there is a concept of what you call const. If I were to say const x is equal to James, and then if I were to try and change it to something else, for example, if I were to something like this, and if I were to try and run it, it'll give me an error. So it basically says that no, you cannot do this. This is not allowed because now you have declared x to be a const. This is not the case in Python, by the way. In Python, as we can see, there is no concept of a const. We can just keep changing the values. Now, if you go to Swift language here, I will just increase the size of this thing. And as you can see that if I were to say, for example, I delete all this, and if I were to say var x, and then if I were to try and print x, for example, and try and run this code, you will see at the lower half there will be an error here, and this is an error which is shown here also. Annotation is missing, so it wants to be annotated by a particular type. So if I were to say, for example, int, and then if I were to try and run it, then let's see what happens. Again, it says that I'm trying to use X before initializing it. So not only in Swift we need to declare the type, but we also have to initialize it with some values. For example, if now initialize with 9 and then I try and print it, 9 will be printed. However, if you want to say there is a possibility that it will not have any value, then we can make it into an optional by simply adding a question mark. Now if I were to run it, you will see a nil value is printed here in the console. So now basically it's saying that there is a possibility that this thing could be nil, and I will have to handle that. So the developer is now responsible for handling this particular value, and the developer itself is telling that there is a possibility that this thing can have potentially nil values. This functionality, this kind of a functionality where the responsibility can go to the developer, is not available in Python, and also it is not available in JavaScript. But of course, we have to understand that Swift was a language that was developed by Apple Corporation. It's a much larger corporation, and so it basically thinks through a lot of things. However, the power of Python and JavaScript also cannot be dismissed. They are very easy to learn and use languages. But this is how you see, like a simple concept like variable declaration, how it differs from one language to another language. And the concept itself is quite amazing to understand that Python is so simple but powerful. JavaScript has its own little quirks, but it is again very powerful. And then Swift is so much better organized. So this was the small video that I just wanted to come up with. And in the future videos, I will again come up with concepts in which I will explain to you in Python, JavaScript, and Swift language, so that you actually understand how a particular programming paradigm works in different architectural scenario. So thank you so much. See you soon.